Hello and welcome to Empire State of Cannabis, New York's home for reefer madness. We'll bring you the experts, activists, policymakers, entrepreneurs, and trailblazers at the front of everything. I'm your host, Kalen Castetter. Thank you for tuning in. We have a great show for you today. Hello, on Empire State of Cannabis today we have Brittany Carbone, the founder and CEO of Tonic Vibes. Brittany, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. So how are you? How is your family? Is everyone healthy?
Everyone's staying healthy, staying safe, just trying to take it day by day. It's definitely been a crazy time, but just trying to make it through and be smart.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
about you?
Same here, hunkered down, getting kind of restless, I think myself and the whole team are.
Yeah, a little bit. It's we are. It's interesting because like half of our team has already been working remotely for a long time now since we are upstate and they are downstate, but we definitely are still like just trying to get our bearings around everybody else working remotely and like how this all affects everything else that we're doing. But it's like, we're used to doing Zoom conferences or FaceTime rather all the time and communicating like that anyway. But luckily we are still able to operate as far as being here in the facility and sending out orders and things like that, just kind of working more with a skeleton crew and doing things like I said, being safe and smart about it, only having the essential people here. But we are very fortunate to still be able to be sending out orders and keeping our business going for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, and that's important. And some companies are going to be easier adapted to the new reality than others. So, as founder and CEO of Tonic Vibes, you're probably one of the more well-known cannabis entrepreneurs in the state. Appearances in Forbes, Lancaster Farming, Flaunt Magazine, Newsday, Pix 11, all over social media, Instagram, Facebook. It's pretty amazing. So, what is the mission? What's the goal of Tonic Vibes?
To the short version is bringing the most healing to the most people. That's really what kind of the beginning of the end and the end of what we're doing is all about. It's and that goes beyond bringing healing through CBD, but also in the way that our community outreach, the kind of events that we participate in, or throw ourselves, the education that we provide. I think that that's really such a strong part about what we're trying to do is kind of be that bridge between wellness and cannabis, or kind of the more mainstream and cannabis. I think that was one of the more difficult things when I was first getting started early on in the CBD industry. It was so restrictive that this was kind of back in early 2017, and it was just so restrictive, and you could not tie yourself in any way to cannabis without having fear of not having credit card processing or not being able to get your products out there and stuff like that. It was a very clear line that had to be drawn between cannabis and hemp, which is silly because as we both know, it's the same plant, right? So how can you separate hemp from cannabis when hemp is cannabis? So it's all about, I think, bringing the two worlds together, right? And teaching people that they are the same plant and that this plant is so versatile that it does have the ability to provide you with therapeutic benefits without the high, or it does, THC has its own kind of array of benefits that it can provide you, and it's so versatile, even beyond the cannabinoids, but from the fiber and the textile kind of standpoint, or the seeds, it's just, there's so many things that can be done with this plant, and even just the impact that it can have on the economy and agriculture. There's so many different ways that this can really be a tool for mental healing, physical healing, and environmental healing. And I think that is what kind of really we are trying to push forward.
And so you're not just a CBD brand, right? You're a cannabis wellness company, right? And I think that something that's really been interesting and how you've been able to brand yourself in Tonic Vibes is touching a little bit on social entrepreneurism, right? Which is somewhat of a new movement where businesses and entrepreneurism is also focused on the social impact they can have. And that leads me to your guys' program, MediHelp. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So that's something that I'm really proud of. It's something actually, it came about pretty organically, and I think that this is something that the rest of my team will probably say that it's the fun and difficult part about working for me is sometimes I just have an idea and I put it out there, and then it's kind of everybody's job to figure out how this is actually going to work. But that's basically what happened with this. I mean, as you know, like, yeah, as we touched upon, we are going through crazy health crisis right now with the pandemic, and the people who are really have become the heroes in our society are the healthcare workers and the first responders that are putting it all on the line, their own health, their own safety, their own sanity, really to working these crazy long hours to make sure that other people's loved ones are okay. And that's something that they do every day, right? But it's just even under more of a magnifying glass now. And it was a good friend of mine that actually reached out to me to ask which blend would be best for anxiety, because she is just going through it right now. And who can blame her, right? She's an ambulance worker, an EMT, and so she was really struggling with anxiety and thought maybe CBD could be something that helped. And then when she asked, I gave her a couple suggestions, so either the chill or the grounded. I'll send you both, try them out. And she asked how much does she owe me for them, and I was like, you're crazy, like, don't even think about it, this is the absolute least that I could do, with all that you're doing. And that's kind of when it struck me. Honestly, like, I was at a point that day, it was kind of like a week into this, like, really being like everybody's locked down, and this can really be something that impacts our business. Like, that reality was really setting in, and I was kind of just feeling in a place where I was scared for the business, you know what I mean, of operating from a place of just like fear and uncertainty, and a little bit of selfishness as far as like, how is this going to affect me, right? And something that I've been trying to do throughout this whole crisis is operate from a place of love rather than fear, kind of get out of my head and into my heart a little bit more. And this kind of is what snapped me back into place, and I was like, this is how we can help, this is how we can turn this into a positive and kind of be a light in the darkness, is to provide this support to our healthcare professionals, our first responders, the people who, like I said, are putting it all on the line, and really suffering through this. We know the kind of risk that they're putting themselves at physically, you know what I mean? That's what's really being the focus. But mentally, that job on any day is mentally taxing. But during this time especially, it's a matter of thinking about their sleep, their anxiety levels, their stress levels. And what Tonic does best, because we use complementary botanicals along with CBD to enhance the benefits, the adaptogenic benefits, right? The ability to help our body's capacity to defend against stress. That's what our blends are really focused on. So figured if we can get this into the hands of the people who need it, if we can just help them a little bit be able to deal with this in a better way, help them sleep a little bit better at night, help their stress levels a little bit, not only is that going to help them, but think about how that helps the people that they're treating, right? Like, think about like the ripple effect that has. So we decided to launch this program where all you have to do is reach out, verify that you are a medical professional right now, and we will send you free product. So we, at this point, this started about a week and a half ago, and we have sent out over 1,200 samples to various hospitals, doctors' offices, running the gamut from nurses, doctors, EMTs, police officers, and all these different people who just really reached out when they heard what we were doing, and were so excited that like somebody was thinking about these things, like I said, thinking about their mental health. And we've just had such an incredible response from that, and the requests keep coming in. But now what's even more amazing are the testimonials that are starting to come in. We're getting feedback from a unit of nurses who are all like, I'm finally sleeping for the first time in weeks. I'm like, finally feel like I can have a little sense of calm and just be able to kind of focus a little bit better. These testimonials that are coming in from them, the feedback that we're getting is just so incredible, and they're all just so grateful and humble. They're the kind of common thread is like, this is what we signed up for, this is what we're gonna do, but like, yeah, we're just short staffed. It's just, we're not built to hold this kind of capacity, right? So they're just being pushed to their limits, and having that little bit of support from our products has been able to help them. And it's just such an amazing feeling to know that we can just be that little bit of light for them.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. And you talk about how everyone in the United States, they're scared, they're watching the news every day, and they're thinking, what can we do to help? And besides just staying home, right? How can I engage my business to help those responders on the front line who are really being affected? Like you said, not only from a physical perspective, but also from a mental health perspective. So really great work you're doing there. So we know that the epicenter of the virus, of the coronavirus in the United States, is really centered in New York, but the metro New York area. So that includes Long Island, which is where you're from, right? And that's where
Yep.
everything started. You're a personal trainer there, right?
Correct. Yep. I was working as a personal trainer, Woodbury, Long Island, and that's kind of where I got a lot of my knowledge about different supplements and different, different herbs and adaptogens and things like that. And I was always a cannabis enthusiast, I guess you can call me, or a pothead, whichever term you like better. But it was that like kind of when I discovered CBD, when somebody told me about it, I was very actively looking for something that could support my mental health the way that cannabis always had, but allow me to be functional throughout the day because that's definitely something that working as a trainer, not only do you have to be very on all the time, right? Like kind of like dazing out and being like uh, real chill and kind of just really high is just not really like the personal trainer vibe that most are looking for in their in the hour that they're paying for. So like there's an element of that, but then also kind of the element of you take one too many hits of that joint before your session, and it's a little bit harder to count those reps. It's just,
Yeah.
so I was always looking for something that could help me was like without the psychoactive effects. And like I said, that's when I really started to get into adaptogens more and like ashwagandha. Those were really things that I felt like I could actually kind of feel a noticeable difference from. But then once I discovered CBD, like this was like late 2016 when it was coming on the scene in a little bit stronger way, but nowhere near the level of saturation that it's at right now, right? But it really intrigued me because honestly, even as a cannabis enthusiast, I just knew that cannabis worked for me. I like never was one of those people that like got super geeky into it and needed to know the exact strain and if this was an indica or sativa, right? Like at that point, like nobody even was really talking about the terpene profile and stuff like that. But like for me, it was always like I just as long as if it's green and it gets me high, like I'm cool. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
CBD, like when I realized that like holy shit, this is actually working. Like I kind of thought of it as probably a lot of like people who are used to just consuming cannabis thought of CBD at first. So like this is like fake weed, right? Like what do you mean? Like if it comes from like hemp, like is it the same as if it comes from marijuana, right? Like again, kind of people not understanding that element of the plant being the same, like that lack of education around that. And I was guilty of it myself. So like that's what really when I felt the actual results of the CBD, it made me really kind of like dive deep into the research of the endocannabinoid system and it's like how is this working, how is this doing that, and then that's when I started to connect the dots between cannabis, CBD, and adapt like those more traditional adaptogens. They really
Where were
work
you
in the same way.
sourcing your CBD from at that time?
That's a great question. It was wherever I could find. Now, so
Yeah.
it was. I ended up like I went through a few different people who kind of same old story that you hear in the early CBD industry days is people who were saying that they were direct from the farm kind of sources or claiming one thing but they were actually just pretty ruthless brokers, and I had a few unfortunate experiences of getting certain COAs sent to me, certain certificates of analysis to verify the product that I was getting. I would wire the money and I would receive a completely different product. And at that time, there was no level of accountability. Like,
Wow.
like it was just really hard to even, be able to go back to them and even argue anything because it was so new, you know what I mean? So it was
Yeah.
ripe for like these people to kind of come in and take advantage. And then I ended up sourcing from, so like it was a branch of I think Colorado cultivars at first, and then like he ended up kind of starting his own thing. But this guy Bo Sullivan Day, and he's awesome. He works with a company called Laurel Crest now, and I always credit him with Tonic being able to progress to the point that it is today, because he was the first person that was not trying to take advantage and actually saying, like, being completely honest and also willing to work with me as far as what our volume capabilities. So that's, we bootstrapped Tonic. We've really started this like grew very organically. I was making these blends in my kitchen, kind of thinking this was going to be a side hustle. I could sell these products to my clients, things like that. And he was like, we're in this together, like long term. Like, I want to grow with you, and was able to like really help me out in that sense. And then like around that same time, because because we were struggling so much with our source, it was kind of around the same time that I had met this guy Bo, was when I kind of presented the idea to my parents of like, hey, like, if the CBD industry is going to grow like it looks like it's about to grow, and it's this hard for me to find a reliable source, and like, you know what I mean, like, we have this property in upstate New York, let's grow hemp on it. We had actually just renovated the barn up there, really like cleaned up the property a lot. It was just kind of like a hunting cabin, like a weekend getaway kind of place for us. But then in 2015, Eric and I actually got married there, and that's what kind of spurred my parents to fix the place up in preparation for the wedding. And then they were spending more time up here anyway, so when I presented the idea, it wasn't quite as far-fetched as it would have been a few years earlier, you know what I mean? And
To start growing hemp.
to start growing hemp, yeah. We
Yeah.
were just like, I was kind of threw that idea out there, not really knowing what was possible, and looking into it a little bit. At that time, this was you had to be licensed under a research institution to grow in New York. So
And
where
this
our
is
farm is located,
2018. This is 2 seasons ago, right? 2018.
this was in preparation for the 2018 season. So this was still like mid 2017 when these like ideas were coming about. So like we started to look into, because our farm is located in Berkshire, New York, which is pretty conveniently located right between Binghamton University and Cornell University. So both of those universities did have hemp programs in place. So our idea was, let's try to get a license under them. And then it was kind of like those signs from the universe are moving in the right direction, because as we started to attend these meetings at Cornell to try to learn more about the process and see where we could fit into it, during that process is when Como announced that he would be opening up the licensing to private farmers. So we were already in a great position where we were, attending these meetings and getting this education, and now all of a sudden it became a possibility for us to not even have to be kind of tied down under somebody else's license, but to have a license of our own, and really dictate what happened to that material afterwards and everything like that. It all kind of came together. So we just ran kind of full force from there, and that's been so amazing being able to have our own farm. Like, I think that's, if we didn't start the farm, I don't think that Tonic would kind of be elevated to the level that it is today, because that level of differentiation is so important. But like, in the sense of that we can provide that level of trust and transparency that the industry is so desperately seeking, that the consumers are so desperately seeking, to actually know exactly where it comes from, and to be able to provide education around the cultivation process and everything like that. It just really kind of brings a different level to it. And I mean, as you can testify yourself, there's just nothing better than being around those hemp plants during the season, right? Like, just there's something about it. Yeah.
And so we met during your guys' first hemp season in the throes of harvest, and so that was a difficult season. You and your husband Eric, working through that. What were some of the immediate challenges that you guys faced when you were looking to start growing your own hemp, which everyone thought was not the easiest thing in the world, but definitely not as challenging as it proved to be, for sure.
Yeah. Right. So definitely one of the biggest challenges was just, first of all, getting like the fields prepped and kind of understanding that, because honestly, we did not have prior farming experience, but we, one of the guys that works on our farm and has been taking care of the land for a long time has more traditional farming experience, but definitely no hemp experience. And we bring a little bit of cannabis growing experience, but nothing to the scale of what we were doing, right? Like, it's completely different animal. So we were kind of all in this together, putting all of our knowledge together however we could. But the first challenge was, like I said, getting the fields prepped. We were laying the plastic mulching and realized that the ground was a lot rockier underneath than we anticipated, and thought it was all right. Like it's still really great, like biodiversity in the soil, and it wasn't like too hard, but just a lot of rocks, right? We didn't realize how big of a problem that was going to be until we started to try to lay our plastic mulching. So you ever see like those plastic roads, for people that might not know, like the dirt essentially should kind of tuck in the edges of that. But because the soil was so rocky, we couldn't get like a good flow of soft soil to keep covering that plastic. So what would happen is like the plastic was kind of just laying on top of the dirt in a mound, and Eric would sometimes be laying his entire body on top of the plastic that's being pulled by the tractor, just trying to hold it down long enough for me and my parents and the other guys to be literally just digging with our hands. Some people had shovels, just digging little rivets and then putting the rocks back on top of the plastic to tuck it back in. Like every time the wind would blow, like, once we had the plants in the ground, like again, because of the rockiness, like with the water wheel planter, where it kind of pokes a hole in that plastic and into the dirt, and you place the rooted plug right in that hole. Again, because of the rocks, those they would kind of get in the way of the holes, whatever. So we'd have to have people kind of tucking in behind us, and then every time the wind would blow, like everybody would kind of pick their heads up like fucking gophers coming out of their holes and just like look, because if the plastic blew over those baby plants, they would rip them right out of the ground and ruin them, and just it was so stressful. I don't think Eric slept for like 3 weeks straight until those babies were rooted a little bit better. And then actually, like for the most part from there, considering the rough foundation that it was built on, the season was going pretty well. But it was, as you remember, one of the rainiest years that we had all year, and our farm happens to be kind of bordered by a creek. And by the end of the season, after so much rain, one good storm just kind of pushed that creek to its breaking point. The rivers rose, the creek came up, and our field was flooded with about 3 feet of water in some places. It was probably the most devastating thing when we woke up that morning and saw what was happening. We just immediately ran outside. We were just like on our stomachs in the mud, chopping down plants with like with a handsaw, just trying to salvage everything that we could, make sure that the plants that were in good condition. Like that's something I should say, we were very lucky that it happened when it did, because it was already into right at the beginning of harvest. So if this flood happened at any other time in the season, we would have been completely devastated, because at that point the plants wouldn't have been able to get to full maturity, and they would have just been done. So at least at this point, we could cut the tops off of the plants that were submerged. We could get to the plants that weren't hit as hard. We could salvage. But that's, like you said, when we met, we were coming off of that experience and hosting a farm like retreat at our they're supposed to be showing people these full maturity plants and everything, which was going to be hard no matter what in the beginning of October. It's kind of the tail end of harvest anyway, but it definitely kind of hurt the vibe there and made for a little bit of a different experience. But I think, again, it was, in hindsight, trying to find the silver lining, it was a really cool opportunity to teach people about that this isn't easy, and that this is something that was new to us as hemp farmers, but this is kind of the standard plight of farmers that have been doing this in every other industry, right? Growing every other kind of produce or whatever it may be. That's just the life of a farmer, and that's definitely something that I took for granted, that I didn't think about when I was getting my food, or what I mean, or my cannabis, right? So I think it was such a valuable learning experience to show people that not only show them the farm, but kind of show them the experience of the farmer, and what it means when you support your local farmers, and what it means to actually make sure that the agricultural community is taken care of, because they put it all on the line for us all the time, right? It's always a risk when you're facing Mother Nature, and it definitely gave me perspective and helped for us to kind of give that perspective to the people that attended as well.
Yeah, it's got to be one of the toughest jobs out there. You mentioned Eric not sleeping for 3 weeks, which is so uncharacteristic. I mean, as I know Eric, I mean, he likes to be in bed by 8 p.m. So did
He's an old man. What can I say? He's an old man.
did you or Eric or your family, did anyone have experience farming before you guys went into that endeavor to plant hemp into the ground?
No, sir. It was a fresh experience for everybody
Yeah.
involved. It was yeah. So that was really the interesting part. Like I said, we did have one worker that has been taking care of that land and had more traditional farming experience. So as far as like uh, kind of knowing those basics and things like that, it was good to have that more agricultural kind of foundation from him. But like I said, growing hemp was something completely new to him, and it's so different. I think that that's something also, especially when growing for CBD production, that it's a hard transition from from farming other vegetables or row crops and things like that, because of the fact that this has to be handled so delicately, and there's not exactly equipment that is made yet to handle everything that needs to be handled when you're growing hemp like this. It needs to be very precise. It needs to be nurtured, and it needs to be harvested in a certain way, and it has a whole other kind of you know risk, I guess you could say, involved, as far as what to watch out for with like powdery mildew and the watering cycles and things like that. It's just a very different plant than most farmers are traditionally used to cultivating. So it
Yeah.
is definitely more expensive at that, and that same kind of for the same reasons, because there aren't as many kind of options to automate the process quite as much, or because you just can't automate some parts of it. There's the expenses that it takes to run a hemp farm is very high, and unfortunately, what we saw in the 2019 season, after the 2018 Farm Bill was passed and the restrictions around applying and getting a license to grow hemp were greatly decreased, what we saw was a lot of people um, you know doing what we did as far as getting into it without experience, but to a much higher extent. So we did keep our grow very small. Year one, we grew 5 acres under the kind of supervision of a consultant, somebody that had done it before for a couple of years out in Oregon, and could help us set things up. We were kind of taking our time with it, and not trying to respect the fact that we were very new to it. Whereas like the 2019 season, CBD was already had a very much of a stronghold in the market. It was very much well known as this huge up and coming industry, the hottest new wellness trend, this and that, all this opportunity. It drew people into it for the wrong reasons, because I think the reason why we went into it with such kind of care and humility is because we inherently had a respect for the plant to begin with. We were coming from a place where we wanted to grow our own material to put into Tonic, because we wanted that like Tonic to be of the highest quality, because we wanted to be able to provide other brands with high quality material, just like the kind that I was looking for and was hard to find. Whereas then you had people that were attracted to getting into it just because they saw dollar signs. And whether this is karma or irony or whatever, we saw what happened after the 2019 season. The market took a really big hit, and it became very difficult for farmers to turn a profit without kind of having contracts in place beforehand, and things like that. It was a lot of people were unprepared for the harvest, and just didn't have the means, or didn't understand kind of what it was going to take to harvest the material that they planted. So I think that what we'll see this year is a leveling out of that, of sorts, as far as the people who were not in it for the right reasons and didn't make the killing that they thought they were going to by growing hemp for 1 year. I think that they will be discouraged enough, because their passion isn't there. They'll be discouraged enough to just kind of cut their losses and walk away. But for the ones that are really in it for the right reasons, I hope that kind of opens up the market for us again, to be able to actually have it be a viable business.
Yeah, for sure. And last year was tough for farmers across the board, not only traditional grain and corn and soy farmers, but also those getting into hemp, like you said, faced unexpected challenges and costs. And a rapid market decline. Now, from a personal perspective, moving from Long Island to Berkshire, for the listeners who don't know Berkshire, it's a rural community, 30 minutes
Yes.
outside of Binghamton. Was that a culture shock for you?
A little bit, yeah. I was admittedly very nervous about the transition. I didn't think I would fare well. I mean, like I kind of went through phases. So we've had this property in our family since 2004. So since I was 13 years old. So I went through the phases of, you know, enjoying going up there with my friends for a weekend, if I could bring a friend along, and then hating going up there with my parents because I was so freaking bored and, like all that. And then like once I was like in my 20s and like, Eric and I started dating and everything, and he loves, like hunting and shooting and going on the quads and all that stuff. So it was like a fun thing for us to do together and like a nice way to escape like the kind of densely populated and
The
bullshit
rat race of the
of
city.
Long Island.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we it was like a nice getaway, but I was like, oof, I don't know. I've never spent more than like 4 days at a time up here. You know what I mean? Like how like I like the convenience of everything that I could possibly want being like 10 minutes away from me on Long Island, and all those things that you would typically associate with that transition. And I'll tell you, like, I think we were also at a point where Eric and I were both so fed up with Long Island, like the traffic is so ridiculous. We were both, before we started Tonic, we were very actively looking for a house. We had gotten married recently. We had like our money from the wedding, and like, we were saving up everything that we could to buy a house, and realizing that it was, no matter how much we would save, there's like it's almost impossible to find a house for under 400,000 on Long Island that's not basically just like a shack that's falling apart and you have to put all that money into anyway. So we were just like so frustrated. It was just becoming something that wasn't as fun as it once was, or like those conveniences weren't kind of worth the trade-offs anymore. So
Yeah.
by the time we moved up here, it was almost like a big exhale. Like it's like we talk a lot about with like through Tonic, like the what it means to ground yourself and ground your energy, and actually to be connected to nature in a much deeper way, and nature not just being the trees and all that stuff, but nature being like the energy that connects us all, the energy that's running through all of that and kind of radiating from the earth. And it gets so noisy in the city, you know what I mean, literally and figuratively. It gets really
Yeah.
hard to kind of cut through that, and then just kind of being in a little bit more peace and quiet, like being able to move a little bit slower, you know what I mean, being able
Yep.
to kind of just like take a step back and like, all right, like it's like your perspective just changes almost immediately. And honestly, I never looked back. It's like it got really tough. So for the first year, this was another really fun part of our first year farming, was that we again, we were saving every dime that we had. So we moved into the farmhouse with my parents, and Eric's dad came up there and was living there as well. He was helping out with building some stuff out in the barn, as well as helping, as we were getting started with the grow. And my uncle was up there probably like 90% of the time. He was helping us out and everything like that. So it was a full house. We were all working together and living together, and pretty much didn't have an escape from each other, right? And even just like little things like probably the biggest like difficulty to get used to was the internet at the farm. There's like barely any internet service. The Wi-Fi so crappy that I couldn't get work done. I'd have to go to my office like 15 minutes away in the town of Owego to even just like take a call and do some work. Like it was just I couldn't even do it like at the farm. So like those kinds of things were frustrating. But now Eric and I, we kind of hit a breaking point as far as being able to live there and work there and coexist on that level. So luckily we were able to find a place in Ithaca, and that has really, I think, become such a great like kind of landing space for us, because it gives a little bit of like the best of both worlds element, where you're in a college town, so there's restaurants, there's stores, there's all the conveniences that you would want, but there's also like these beautiful gorges, and we're still pretty close to the farm and to nature, and it's still like of course nowhere near the kind of like subconscious stress that you're exposed to on Long Island or Manhattan.
Yeah, yeah. That almost, you almost set the stage for a great reality TV show.
Yeah,
Big
we were
big
just saying
Italian
that.
family on a
We were
farm in
saying that
upstate
the
New
other
York.
day because now it's crazy. I keep saying that Owego Chamber of Commerce should like give me a medal because now there's like three people that have moved into Owego in the past 6 months, all from downstate, and we're kind of taking over there, and now to kind of bring it all together even more, my sister was like kind of the last holdout that was still living in Brooklyn and everything like that. And she, over the summer, started to date one of the, farmhands that works for us. And so now it really is a cohesive unit. Nobody's left out. It's all connected. And during this whole, during the coronavirus, she's been hunkering down up here. So she's up here with us now. And we were, together at the farm recently, and we were saying just like we really need to like pitch this to reality TV because I think we have every element of craziness and stress and just we're all over the place. So yeah, we got cannabis, we got family relationships, all the fun stuff that makes for a train wreck of reality TV.
Right. But also exemplifies some of the most beautiful aspects of New York, right? The diversity, not only cultural and ethnic diversity in New York, but also diversity of landscape and of nature throughout this huge state and family. So when we look at this crisis and how it's peaked in New York, specifically, we're reminded that we're all family. We're all New Yorkers, right? And so, how are you looking towards the future here in terms of Tonic, and what's next for Tonic?
So we actually just opened our extraction facility at Bardo, and this is kind of the final piece for us. This was really the vision from the beginning was like, yeah, we'll grow our own hemp, but then we still have to outsource that processing and extraction to a lab, and kind of take a little bit of a cut there, either through upfront payment or by a split our share of the yield and things like that. So we still kind of weren't all the way where we needed to be. And with this is like the last piece of the puzzle, and it has been really, really amazing. Kind of, like you said, just like really the beautiful thing about New York and kind of just like the that energy that we have and that we push with, and just like kind of not taking no for an answer and just really kind of putting our head down and getting things done, right? And it's attracted the best kind of people to work for us and work with us, and it's the two newest members of our team, Mona and Larson. They are Larson is our chief science officer for Bardo, and Mona is actually kind of a split job between Tonic's production manager and Bardo's lab manager, but she's overseeing all the formulation and contract manufacturing projects that we get, as well as the manufacturing of Tonic's products. And they are both just such like amazing geniuses when it comes to science, like just so like over my head, like a lot of this stuff, like just amazing chemists and like brilliant minds. But the really amazing thing is that they're both young and they're both very hungry to make change and not to kind of fall into the status quo of kind of falling into these more traditional industries. Larson has a lot of a strong background in cannabis, but Mona really just has that background in science. But their thing that they really had in common was that we're not okay with just how things are. Let's continue to find how we can make things better, and that means how do we make sure that this industry is evolving in a way that is productive. And I mean, Mona is from Jamaica. She has that Rasta in her blood, and is really a big proponent of cannabis and kind of where it should be heading. And it's just amazing to have everybody together on the same vision, and it's amazing to do it in this environment. New York is pushing forward, kind of pushing past the FDA and saying, I don't care if you're dragging your feet. We want standardization. We want regulation. We want this to be a legitimate industry, and that's exactly the landscape that we need for us to be able to thrive and to do to complete our vision, which is, to bring this legitimacy and to, like I said, bridge these communities, bridge these kinds of the science and like the chemistry and the and then the cannabis and like the wellness, like bringing all these things together. What is needed for that is kind of a more standardized playbook, you know what I mean? And that's something that's been really amazing about going through this whole process in New York, is that we've been, we weren't the first to do it, right? It's like out, Colorado and Oregon, Washington, like, they might have been starting this process before us, but like in the true New York fashion, we are pushing it forward like nobody else, and we have the market to support it, and we have these people that need it, right? Because New York is so fucking stressful to live in. It's we need
Yeah.
CBD to calm down more than anybody, right? But it's, I think, really I think even like correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was some statistic about even cannabis use in New York, like have the highest like cannabis use per capita, and I think that's like even more of a reason that we need to kind of stop dragging our feet when it comes to the legislation and moving things forward. And I'm very happy about the work that Donna did and how you helped her, as far as shaping this hemp bill, because it is the what I think will be kind of the blueprint going forward, or at least what I hope to be the blueprint. It's something that we are making sure that we are following GMP standards and formulating and producing to the same standards as dietary supplements, like regardless of whether of what we need to label it as, like to have a blueprint for like what is the standard, what is considered safe, like if like this is how we produce a safe product for all these like these other industries, these other supplements. And like there's no reason, whether the state is mandating you or not, there's no reason why you shouldn't be applying those same kind of standards for safety and compliance to your business, if you really have the intention to help people and to be transparent in your process and to really put out a good quality product. What New York is doing has created an environment where that can thrive.
Absolutely, yeah, and the hope is that we can apply that same standard, that empire standard that has come about through hemp onto adult use cannabis. And but none of that's really possible without entrepreneurs such as yourself. And Brittany, thank you so much for coming on to Empire State Cannabis. Such an amazing story, and we hope to have you back soon. Say hi to the family and stay healthy.
All right back at you. Thank you so much, Kaylin.
Thank you.